Welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. So today I wanted to get into another solid list of 7 underfollowed CGC 9.8 comic books that you can invest in. Because I think, some of those obvious key issues have really just taken off in price in the CGC 9.8. So it's kind of a bit challenging actually to come up with some underfollowed books that are still like investment grade books. And I think, these ones, even though for one reason or another they're kind of underfollowed, I think they're still really good investment grade books. So let's get into it here of these not so obvious key issues. And we'll start with a pretty huge investment grade book. This is one I kind of hit myself for not talking about it a lot more. I've tried to grab this one in the past, but I still do not own this one in the CGC 9.8 white pages. And it's a G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, number 21. Yeah, this is talking about the first print here because they all kind of look the same, all the different prints. So usually when that happens, the collectors go right after the first print. And that's kind of what happens with G.I. Joe 21, the classic silent issue, first appearance of Storm Shado. The stealth silent issue, which has just become pretty much the most wanted G.I. Joe key, along with G.I. Joe number 1 for sure. I think number 1 and 21 are the most wanted keys, but 21 is more rare in the 9.8 and more expensive. So 109 CGC 9.8s out there in the blue label for G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, number 21. Yeah, this is such an investment grade book. I wish I had it, and I almost bought one before, but kind of didn't pull the trigger. 109 in the 9.8 blue label. 9.5% of all graded copies are CGC 9.8s, and that's anytime you get into the single digits in the 80s is an investment grade ratio. So you love to see that. And usually when you get into the single digits, and that's like pretty much bottom of the barrel, I'm pretty sure, for G.I. Joe comics in the CGC 9.8. G.I. Joe number 1 is not a single digit 9.8. It's like 19% of all graded copies or something like that, if my memory's correct. So this is one of the most rare big key issues in G.I. Joe to collect for sure. And the price kind of shows that because there's a few completed listings on eBay where they have the best offer, and they're not so transparent about kind of what the final price was. But there was one final in an auction, and I think it was about a month ago, $1,425 in the CGC 9.8. And I think when I was looking to grab this one, it was right around that sort of 1,300, 1,400 mark, and that was probably about 2 years ago now. This one was looking pretty good too, nicely centered. Sometimes I'll see a first print, and I think that's maybe why I didn't buy the one 2 years ago. The centering was a bit off, and usually when you're spending that much, you almost just want it to be perfect. So this one was looking pretty good. In an auction, $1,425. I think that's a really good price for this one. Yeah, I would, if it was looking good, centered, first print, CGC 9.8, nice looking new case, I would pay $1,425 for this one. Definitely an investment grade book, but it's still kind of underfollowed, and it's so rare. There's only 109 out there in the 9.8. If that 9.8 ratio was a little bit higher, like around G.I. Joe number 1, there would probably be about 250 to 300 9.8s. But yeah, this one is just one to go after if you're into investment grade books. If you're into G.I. Joe and into an investment grade 9.8s, this one is at the top of a list. And I've again saying kind of hitting myself for not talking about this one more often and recommending it more often on the channel. Okay, next one here, underfollowed one. This one is still underfollowed for some reason. I think there's other books maybe people prefer over it, but I prefer this one. It's Uncanny X-Men number 133. Yeah, so this is pretty much like the first solo Wolverine story, kind of his own story, and you get a great Wolverine cover as well. There's 232 CGC 9.8s in the blue label, so getting over 200 there, and this is a 1980 book, so a pretty old book, and but that's still a nice collector item. That's sort of one of 232 in the perfect 9.8. 14.7% the 9.8 ratio, so of all graded copies, 14.7% are CGC 9.8s. That is not too bad at all, although this book is getting pretty old there, 1980, almost getting into the 70s. So, but still a decent, investment grade ratio, I think. And interesting for this book with the price, because this was one, you know, I've really tried to grab this one, but just, you know, for some reason or another didn't end up pulling the trigger. But it was always around 400. Some people getting great deals, I thought, around 350, like, you know, 6 months ago, I would say. Having a look at the completed listings, though, on eBay, one sold for $700. And another one, though, you know, maybe a month or two ago was $439. So $439, you know, anywhere under 500, I think for this one, it's worth it because, again, I say, you know, there are a couple other books that I think the collector community prefers over this one, and I'm talking about a Wolverine Limited Series #1. That book, not quite as rare in the 9.8 as this one. There's way more on the census. There's like 2,000 and something in the 9.8 of that one because it's so popular, that Frank Miller cover. But that's about $500 now in the CGC 9.8, whereas I purchased mine. I do have that one, Wolverine Limited Series #1, for $275. Now it's $500. If you can grab Uncanny X-Men 133, more rare in the 9.8 and less 9.8s for about $500. I think that's a steal right now, considering where Wolverine Limited Series has come along. All these Frank Miller books sort of really heating up, and yeah, that surprised me how far kind of Wolverine Limited Series #1 has come in price. About $500 now, some of them are selling for. So Uncanny X-Men, I think if you can get this one in the 9.8 white pages, looking great around that $500 level, that's one to consider, absolutely. And fits on an underfollowed list, because again, yeah, that Wolverine Limited Series #1 is the main key. Okay, next one is one I got two of here, brought them out, Wolverine 88. Yeah, this is one of my favorite 90s books to recommend. It's, you know, the 90s in general are kind of underfollowed, and then this book just being kind of pretty underfollowed too, because it doesn't have a big first appearance, but it's the first time Wolverine and Deadpool ever duke it out. And there's like great art in there, you know, a bunch of panels of them just slashing at it and stabbing each other, and it's such a cool read, I think, as well. Yeah, and again, just underfollowed in the 90s and an underfollowed book on top of that, maybe because it doesn't have a first appearance, but with Deadpool coming back to the MCU, very likely. X-Men coming back to the MCU, very likely. I mean, maybe if they all get in a movie, this is going to be a book that will get really hot and I think will increase in price. Certainly around that time. There's not a lot of them out there. Yeah, 81 9.8s in the blue label. 81 CGC 9.8s. They've sort of have them separated on the census. I just combined the deluxe edition and the normal edition. But the thing about the census is that the non-deluxe, that was sort of the original census, where the deluxe and the non-deluxe were all thrown into that original census. So this one's kind of weird on the census, but there's 81 9.8s in the blue label. Some of those being the non-deluxe, which is the more rarer version. So both of mine are the deluxe version, and that was the one that was printed the most. There's the more rare non-deluxe version in the 9.8s that is kind of lumped in with this 81 number, unfortunately. But those are more rare. I've sort of saw those go for like 300-ish before. Yeah, I think it was just under 300 in the 9.8. But Wolverine 88 in the deluxe edition, sorry, the sort of normal edition, deluxe edition. I know it's called the deluxe, but that's just how it works. Is, I think, a great 90s book to consider. 81 in the 9.8 blue label, 46.5% the CGC 9.8 ratio. And right now, yeah, they're selling for about $140. There was one a couple months ago, I believe, that went for over 200. So this is a book where I picked up mine. One was $100 and one was like $60. Like I got really lucky on an auction. But now that, yeah, they've sort of heated up, and I think it's people anticipating, you know, some of these MCU appearances with X-Men and Deadpool, and maybe me just making a lot of videos too, because this is one of my favorite underfollowed, certainly 1990s books, probably my favorite underfollowed 1990s books in the 9.8 to grab. Wolverine 88, yeah, and the CGC 9.8, hopefully under $150. First Wolverine and Deadpool battle, yeah, such a great cover. Adam Kubert on the cover. Yeah, just a great book for the price and from every angle, kind of. All right, next one I got too. It's a Marvel Spotlight version 2, number 6 here. Yeah, this is the first comic book appearance of Star-Lord, Peter Quill. Great cover, yeah, like two kind of legends on the cover. There's Bill Sienkiewicz and Joe Rubinstein. And yeah, 1980 book, so yeah, I get a pretty old one for this book as well. There is that first appearance of Star-Lord in the magazine. I think that's from 1976. So if you're even more serious about, this is the first comic book appearance. If you're even more serious about Star-Lord, you could possibly check out. It's Marvel Preview 7, I believe. I didn't check that, but could be wrong. Marvel Preview magazine, though, first appearance of Star-Lord. But for the comic book version, a little more affordable, pretty underfollowed too. There's only 81 9.8s out there in the blue label. So yeah, kind of a 1 of 81 collector item is pretty great, I think, for me just being a big like Guardians of the Galaxies fan, like just loving the movies and really getting to love Guardians of the Galaxies. 17.6% is the CGC 9.8 ratio. So of all graded copies, 17.6% of them are 9.8s. Not too bad, and like considering there's not a lot of them on the census too, like under 20 is pretty great no matter what. So not too bad in the 9.8 kind of relative rarity there. Looking for completed listings and prices for Marvel Spotlight version 2 number 6 in the CGC 9.8 white pages. GoCollect's got it at $300, and I kind of jumped on one for mine maybe 6 to 8 months ago it was, and I paid about, it was, yeah, $230 or $225 or something like that. And I thought that was a really good price, and it was a buy it now, and I could kind of tell the seller was probably pretty motivated to just, you know, make $200 rather than trying to get $250 to $300, which is what I thought would be the fair value for this one. And it looks like, yeah, a couple are selling around $300. And yeah, I just say, if you're a big Guardians of the Galaxies fan and a big Star-Lord fan, this is one to consider. It's an old book. There's not a lot. A 1 of 81 collector item for kind of less than $300, I think, is awesome. And yeah, it fits on an underfollowed list for sure. Okay, next book here. It's really expensive, but it fits on an underfollowed list, I think, still. But still a 100% investment grade book, I think. It's a Saga of the Swamp Thing number 37. Yeah, we talked about this one before. First appearance of John Constantine. And there's 279 9.8s in the blue label for this one. And for such a, you know, really popular character, that's not too much. And this is kind of a mid-80s book, so 13.8%, the 9.8 ratio. So of all graded copies, 13.8% of them are 9.8. So that's not too bad for kind of a mid-80s book. That's getting really kind of juicy in the rarity. But not single digits yet. But I was pretty surprised of the price of an auction that just kind of recently ended in this one. In the CGC 9.8 white pages. It was from sort of a more popular seller. So this could be a bit near the higher end of the range is my sort of suspicion. But one had sold in an auction for $1,302 in the CGC 9.8. Yeah. So, you know, first John Constantine, I think, you know, he's not sort of an obvious hero. So like that, I think, is why he kind of fits on like an underfollowed list. There's certainly a lot of like Marvel heroes and villains that you might think of, and DC heroes and villains too. Before John Constantine, so he probably fits on an underfollowed list. But this one, it's a really, as I said, a legit investment grade book. 1,302 though. You know, I was sort of under the impression that you could probably pick this up for like $800 in the 9.8, but there's not a lot of these out there, and I think they're kind of tightly held. Like you just don't see many popping up on the market at all. To purchase. So yeah, in this hot 9.8 comic book market, yeah, but they're still hot. Like I know a lot of people might be calling for a crash, but $1,302 for this one in an auction still makes me think there's a lot of appetite for, you know, high grade investment grade CGC 9.8 comic books. So one to consider, though. I think it fits on an underfollow list. If you're serious, this is the book to get about John Constantine appearances. Hopefully, though, closer to 1,000, let's call it. Yeah, the 9.8 white pages. Hopefully, you're maybe from a less popular seller, but it just, you know, someone who wants to get rid of it a little bit quicker, and you get it a little closer to 1,000. But still an investment grade book that you might have to pay up for a little bit more. Okay, the next two here are definitely underfollowed ones, I think, but, you know, pretty huge keys. Yeah, so first one here, it's a Star Wars Legacy number 1 I want to talk about. Great cover on this one, like just a buy based on the cover. We'll talk about the first print. There are kind of all these other prints that came out, and I can almost understand that given how cool this cover is. But in the first print, very well collected by Star Wars collectors. Get a bunch of first appearances of sort of some new age Skywalkers in this book. Yeah, I'll have kind of the first appearances down here, and I didn't even write them down. There was a lot going on in this issue, but great cover. Instantly kind of wanted it. Yeah, a couple people on the team showing me that they grabbed this one, and yeah, this is one to consider. An underfollowed Star Wars book, and these Star Wars books, I think, do have pretty good potential. 39 in the CGC 9.8 blue label out there in Star Wars Legacy #1. 59.1% the 9.8 ratio. Pretty new book, so you know, not going to get super low with the 9.8 ratio, but that's more about the 1 of 39, to be honest, for Star Wars Legacy. In the first print, great looking cover. Yeah, already though, this is becoming a well-collected book, and it does sort of have like a lot of first appearances and a great cover, so you almost expect it. $675 is kind of, you know, some of the cheapest completed listings I'm seeing, to be honest. There's a couple buy it now or best offers that weren't as transparent about the final price kind of thing, but my suspicion probably a little bit higher than $675. Yeah, certainly a really expensive book, I think. But if you're right into some of these Star Wars characters, and yeah, kind of a great like new age Sith cover, I think. Yeah, this one is actually pretty wantable, so I can understand it. But yeah, getting over $700 for, you know, a new kind of a modern book in the CGC 9.8. There's a lot of like cool books you can buy for under $700, under $800 kind of thing. So I'll be interested to see kind of what happens with this one, but hopefully maybe you get it, you know, under $700. I'm going to say closer to $600 in the CGC 9.8 for this one. And I was seeing this one's heating up. Yeah, there were like some completed listings, you know, 6 to 8 months ago, let's call it. This book was kind of $400, $425. So yeah, and yes, did see a completed listing for $675. And a couple other buy now best offers selling, and it was like 1,000 or best offer kind of thing. So, but one to consider if you're a Star Wars fan. Yeah, Star Wars Legacy #1 in the first print, and I think it does fit on an underfollowed list. Okay, last one here is maybe becoming a little bit more of a key, certainly every day, because there's more 9.8s on the census now. It's Cade and the Last Padawan #6 I want to talk about here. It's the first full appearance of Sabine Wren. First full appearance of Wren is kind of why a lot of people are thinking about this book. I really like the cover too, so yeah, whenever you get a first full appearance of a character with kind of some really good potential with a great cover, you know, that's one to possibly consider for sure. And yeah, so I mentioned there when I probably originally recommended this on a video, I think there were like 17 or 16 9.8s on the census. It might even have been single digits. Like now 61 CGC 9.8s in the blue label. So people are hunting this one and sending it to CGC because yeah, the prices are getting up there. 79.2% the 9.8 ratio. So nothing to kind of write home about there, but it's a newer book. $400 is about the price that I think is a decent price for this one. I think some have went a little bit over, some have went a little bit under. But yeah, one that, you know, it's really a lot of people right now. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. People are speculating that Wren, who's like a Mandalorian warrior, and she's young and she's kind of an explosive expert. And people are speculating that she's going to be in Mandalorian season 2, maybe. So, you know, the potential with this book could be sort of Star Wars Clone Wars #1, although I think that one's maybe a little bit less printed, but this one, yeah, if Wren gets into Clone Wars or Mandalorian, I could see this one probably going for a lot more than $400. But if she doesn't, yeah, I could see this kind of, you know, maybe a normal value for this book would be sort of like a $250 kind of deal. Yeah, like, 250 to 300 possibly, which is kind of in line with Darth Vader #3, the first Dr. Aphra first print. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this one, but it is underfollowed, and if you're into these Star Wars kind of Clone Wars, characters, this is a great one to have. Yeah, Cade and the Last Padawan #6, Cade and the Last Padawan #1 as well. You get a lot of first appearances in that book. but number 6 probably a little bit more underfollowed. So yeah, one to consider. Hopefully under 400 in the 9.8, you can grab it. Okay, so that was 7 there. Yeah, 7 underfollowed CGC 9.8 comics. I know, I think every underfollowed list I have Wolverine 88 on it, admittedly, but I think we got a couple other ones out there that, you know, hopefully can give you some new ideas. And thinking about top picks too, like all of these are just pretty sweet. Like it was really hard, like G.I. Joe 21, you know, Swamp Thing 37, such hardcore great investment grade books, Wolverine 88. So I'll just let you choose your own out of this one. Yeah, I think a good list to kind of get some ideas, and you can maybe narrow it down to your own top picks. But all right, we'll conclude up here. If you haven't already, though, I would invite you to join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8. Hit the bell for all the latest video notifications, and add me on Instagram and Twitter as well. Message me on Instagram too, kind of the easiest way to ask me a question. Just get to me on Instagram. Usually I'll get back to everyone within the day. So yeah, you know what? I just think in this environment, it's worthwhile to kind of think of these underfollowed books, because yeah, those main key issues, they've all taken off and blown up, and they're so expensive in the 9.8. And some of these are expensive too, but I think they're more investment-worthy books, and they do kind of fit on, you know, thinking about underfollowed books more now, I think, is a better, sort of more savvy move than just going after like an Ultimate Follow 4 or Batman Beyond #1. Like a lot of these 9.8s have really heated up. So, all right, thanks again for watching. Really appreciate all the support from the team. Thanks so much, and I'll see you on the next one.